I believe in now is the best time to a call to order to men to rise up and for men to begin to grow out of their childish ways. And so, I'm not saying stop being a child, or I'm not saying necessarily be super duper serious, but there has to be an element to where we say, okay, it's time to shift gears. It's time to focus on the family. It's time to focus on our marriage. Time to focus on our business and our career. What's going on, Trey Show 9? Welcome to the Tiny Desk experience. And today I wanted to talk about a few things leading up to where Trey Show 9 is from when it first started up until now. It was for men. It was for men who were struggling. It was for men who felt lost. It was for men who felt trapped. It was for me. It was for me. I felt all of those things. I experienced all of those things. I experienced things that I put myself into, like, because of my actions, this is what happened. And I wanted to kind of go through that timeline and I'm not going to necessarily bring clarity through like specifics, but there will be clarity through the stories. So when I got married, it was a time where I was pastoring at a church. It was a time where I was extremely clear on what I wanted to do. And it was a time where I experienced lots of healing. And so because I experienced that healing, I was able to even take that leap. Right? I was even able to want to commit. Right? I knew that wasn't a question. And so fast forward, we get married, and we do it small, not too big, nothing crazy. And I started to notice something about myself in the first weeks and months of being married. Was I happy? For sure, I was happy. But I knew that there was something lacking, right? And here's the crazy thing: I thought I was going through all the motions, right? I was doing all the things. Looking back now, what I believe wasn't happening was there wasn't any practicality, and I hadn't really worked through trauma that honestly I didn't know that I was experiencing. You know what I mean? I didn't. It just, when you get older, as you get older, you're like, oh, well, those things will just fade off and it'll just naturally drop off. If I ignore it, it'll be gone, right? I don't have to deal with it. And that couldn't be further away from the truth. That being married, we've been married for, 15, 16 years now. And what it does is it the other person is a reflection of yourself. And so a lot of times you get mad and you get into fights, and you think that it's the other person, and you're wondering why the other person's not doing this, and they're telling you about yourself, and you're like, well, you do this too, and this and that. And really where you have to get down to, especially when you're as a man, because this is where we're at here, is talking to men. This is the original intent of Trey Show 9. Getting to that point when you're doing the whole back and forth, this and that, it's engaging. You have to listen. As a man, you have to listen, and obviously, and you're going to have to be the observer in the argument. Okay? You have to be the observer. What are some of the characteristics of an observer? An observer is curious, right? And so we're going to use curiosity when we're even in a knockout, blowout fight with our spouse, with our wife. We're going to use that this curiosity of like, man, okay, there's something that I'm missing here. There's something that I'm clearly not understanding, right? And it can't be with her. And if it is with her, it has to start with me. Okay? If it is with her, right, it has to start with me. You have to work out the process, right? It's going to take a long time. It's going to take some time. And I've been on this journey for maybe 5 years or so. And every single day I'm learning something different. Every single day I'm making a mistake. And every single day I'm learning from that mistake. Every single day. And I can say that with, it doesn't bother me. But before, some time ago, it was like, when is this going to end? When I came to realize that it's never going to end. It will never end. And that is totally fine. Totally fine. Totally fine. But we have to get to that point of curiosity. We have to get to that point of being the observer in the argument, in the knockout, blowout argument, you know? And so there was something missing. I was missing something, man, because I was like, why? Okay, I'm married and I love this woman, yet I'm still a little, what am I feeling here? I'm feeling trapped. I'm feeling, I have all of the stories of nightmares of people talking about marriage in a negative way, right? And I have all the stories of people talking about marriage in a positive way. And so sometimes what happens, the bad outweighs the good sometimes. So we like to focus on that negative thing, right? Because we think that negative thing is going to help us and going to keep us from disaster. And so we it's going to save us. It's going to help us. And so we cling on to that. That's a weird thing. It's a drug, actually. You know, you find a lot of this in churches, where you have these people that are super holier than thou, but their drug is drama, right? I mean, they love drama. Their drug is gossip. They love to gossip, love to talk bad about people, but just talk about people, right? We as humans, we love to talk about people. We love to judge and this and that. And that's it's almost, I don't know if that's natural. I'm not really sure, but we definitely love to do it. And I had all these ideas in my head, man. I was just like, dude, I need to get this together because if I don't get it together, I'm feeling like I shouldn't be in this relationship. Like I'm feeling like I shouldn't be here, okay? Right? So that's what I was thinking, right? I was thinking that, right? So I'm going through all that stuff. And before I got married, I had the privilege of talking to different pastors, and I had a privilege of talking to a life coach and a transformational coach. And he gave me a book, and I don't recall what the book was about. I want that book back, so I'm gonna figure that one out. But it's a couple things. It talked about triggers, you triggering your spouse. And why that isn't the proper way, because you can be negging at it and making fun at it and poking at it, being the person that you are. Like, I'm that person, right? And you don't know that you're actually triggering that person, and that person is maybe seems like they're taking it, but they're really not, because they're being triggered. And so the other part was that is in counseling from a standpoint which is not popular, maybe not back then, and maybe it is right now, I'm not really sure, but he was saying you counsel from the Spirit. So it's not you that's counseling, it's the Spirit that's counseling, and you are the facilitator, right? And I took those things, and I still actually, now that I'm finally getting back into this, I'm taking these things and saying, okay, how did that work? How did that play? Can I use these tools in my marriage? And I did. You know, I made an obscene amount of mistakes that we're going to talk about. We're going to spend a lot of time, not on this particular podcast, but we're going to start that process of opening up, start that process of becoming vulnerable and I just remember being very mean. Um, it's super windy outside, so my curtains are blowing back and forth. Don't mind that. I was mean. I was upset. I was bitter because I was dealing with past trauma I had. And when you actually you take the trauma, you heal from the trauma, you deal from the trauma, you get to deal, you get to put out different cards. You get to your deck of cards changes when you actually get rid of stuff. You'll see your mood changes, the way you process things completely changes. Death is probably one of the hardest things that we have to experience as humans. Why? It's because that God has placed eternity into our hearts. So it is challenging, and it's just downright just it's insane how when people leave our life, it whether it's a breakup or a death or a separation, divorce, whatever it is, there's issues that need to get dealt with professionally. They have to get worked out. And if you don't have any money, then that's where the spirit comes in, right? You're going to have to really dig deep, and you're going to have to really get some serious help consistently. Consistent help. Consistent. All right. So I was rude. I was bitter. I was turned off. I was not connected. You know what I mean? I was not connected to my wife. And I didn't know why. Very confusing. Very, very confusing, because it's like, I love this person. So what is going on? Like, why isn't this thing working? And so, yeah, I had to figure that one out. And I remember making all the mistakes by thinking that I should be with somebody else. And when that thought comes in of thinking of you being with somebody, you start to look, and then you start to think about all your exes, right? And I ended up actually calling one of my exes and having a conversation. And the conversation wasn't really about it wasn't anything sexual per se. It wasn't like, oh, I miss you, this isn't, and maybe I said I miss you, but it wasn't like dirty or anything like that. And it wasn't like we had plans to actually hook up. What it was is that she had gotten pregnant. And she had a miscarriage. And so my emotions were up and down, and I was with her at that time. Obviously, when I had this conversation, this text message, I wasn't with her. I was already married to Tamara. And so that backfired, and that exposed. Indirectly, I was exposed, right, which was a very good thing, right? And she had went back. The ex-girlfriend had went to this person, and then this person went to the head of the church, and then that head of the church called me in. And when they called me in, they only called me, and I didn't know what was going on, so I thought I was going to a meeting at the house. I thought I was going to a meeting to talk about certain issues with the ministry, and come to find out it was about me and those text messages. And it was devastating, because then I had to tell my wife, and so she was very upset, and which brought me to the beginning of, and it wasn't like I got my act together. It brought me to the beginning of realizing that I needed to get my act together, right? And so as I'm sitting here now, I reflect back and I go, what do men have to do to get out of that? Well, first they have to become honest. They have to be, they can't lie. Lying to yourself, it just builds calluses, and it builds a wedge, and it begins to build a gap, and that gap gets built without the bridge. And so now you have to go through the valley just to get to the other side. And when you do it properly, you can build that bridge. But when you do it and you keep, it's funny because I'm trying to put it into perspective. I was working with the NA and AA group from Redwood City, California. I was working with them with the service league and in conjunction with the jail. They had this group. They had these guys, these pastors basically, or these priests. They were priests from the Catholic Church that would come in, and one of the guys was George. He was 80 something years old, and he looked like he was on his deathbed. But inside he had so much life. I mean, this guy drove. He was married. He loved his wife. He was an inspiration. Because he was on 10. This guy was on level 10, and he was 80 something years old. And he would always say this. He would always say, it took me 47 years to complete 1 year of sobriety. Took him 47 years or whatever. It was like 30, maybe 20 years. Let's just call it 20, right? 20 or 30 years or whatever it was to get to complete 1 year of his sobriety. So his thing was drinking, right? He didn't want to drink anymore, right? Because he was just a raging alcoholic. And when he drank, it was horrific and very dangerous to himself and other people. And so that was the wake up for me. That was the wake up and saying, okay, here's this thing just happened, right? The text message that I text got leaked, right? And I was exposed, which was a good thing. Very good thing. Extremely good thing. And it was what I did afterwards that set the course of doing things the proper way. Still made mistakes, but I was at least in the right direction. And that was telling the truth to my wife. She was like, well, what was that meeting about, and why wasn't I invited? So not only was she hurt because of what I did, she was also hurt because she wasn't invited. And that wasn't a dig on me. So she was mad at me, she was mad at the leadership. Right? She was upset. So now here's two groups of people that she's upset with, right? Because she's like, that doesn't make sense. I should have been there, And so telling the truth, being honest, telling the truth. I can't tell you, that is the foundation, right? If you think of a skyscraper and the foundation of a skyscraper and what goes into a foundation, all the cement, all the rebar, all the steel to hold up a massive, massive building. Well, here's this foundation that and massive element to a proper relationship is a man cannot lie. You cannot lie. You cannot lie. You have to be honest. You have to be honest with yourself. You have to be honest with everybody else. And it will take some time, and it will take a lot of practice. Lots and lots of practice. And it could be years. It could be years. It took the guy, George, it took him 20, 30 years to complete 1 year of his sobriety. So that is the first step. That is the first step in rising up as a man. That's the first step in becoming that warrior. That's the first step of becoming that lion, right? That you so desire, right? And that's why these guys are playing video games all the time, because you're in a supernatural place, defeating things, right? You need to take that tenacity and move it into your relationship, right? And I believe if you did that, there's a lot of women that would be happy. There's women out there right now that have that believe that their men have addictions of gaming and addictions of video games. There's a lot of it. There's that porn addiction, and that porn addiction and all these different addictions, right? Whatever it is, right? It could be work, it could be you're flirting, it could be emotional extra relationship outside of the marriage. It could be womanizing, it could be porn, it could be all these different things, and you have to be honest about those things with somebody, right? And why not your spouse, right? Why not? right? And here's why I did that is because this is a person that I'm choosing to spend my life with. This is a person that I trust. Okay. This is a person who I love. This is a person who I cherish. This is a person who I care for. So I need to start acting like it and getting my act in gear and producing good fruit in this marriage, right? And that's the goal every day. So every time I messed up, every time I made a mistake, I would always have that epicenter. I would always have that place of this is what I'm trying to get back to. I'm trying to get back to this is my mission. These are my pillars. This is what I'm going to do. Okay. Extremely important. It's very basic, right? It's extremely basic. And I didn't have a coach necessarily along my side to be able to coach me through this. Had I had done that, it wouldn't have taken so many different years. Because sometimes you have relationships right now that need immediate help. Like they're going down, crashing down, and there's only one parachute, but they need two. And some relationships, you're just not, they shouldn't be together, for different reasons. Maybe the relationship is violent, maybe he or she is violent, and maybe he or she is, maybe your wife, is an alcoholic, maybe she spends too much. Maybe she's, has a retail addiction, spending addiction, right? And so these things are super duper important. And this is why, guys, the other thing is that I had to become solid. I had to become purpose driven. I had to be on my game every single day. And I couldn't be like, well, I'm tired. I don't really want to do it. Oh. No, there is none of that, right? I don't care if your whole family, right? There's days where, people don't want to do things in the house because they're sick and this and that. And I get that. I understand that. I understand that. But you have to stay the course. You have to stay the course. And we had a miscarriage, right? So then there was another defeat, right? But with that defeat, I became empowered. Through the death of my child, for our firstborn, I became empowered. And I don't know, it just launched me into greatness. And I still use that. I still use that pain. I use pain because it was told to me by a pastor leader of mine who at the funeral, he said this. He goes, the pain that you're feeling of your daughter not being here, use that pain, actually allow God to take that pain and use it for his glory, but use it in a mighty way where it can be, and I know this may not be popular, but it worked. It worked. Where that thing can be like, remember how you felt over here? Remember how real that situation was. Remember how real the Word of God was. Remember how real Scripture was. Remember how it came alive. When our daughter passed away, it was like walking. The words formed into like a person. It was crazy, and it was crazy. I can't even explain it. And maybe one day I can get through that process and explain that, and I will. We'll definitely dive into that. But it was the event that happened. And what was my response? My response was, gonna go harder. I'm gonna go harder. I'm gonna go harder. Because we don't know the life right now. When I think about the death that the death that I've seen and experienced, I have to go harder. as a man, I'm just like, what am I doing? It's a wake-up call. I use all of these things for as a wake-up call. When my wife is upset and mad and this and that, and yelling and frustrated, I don't like this about her. I don't like that. She's doing this, blah, blah, blah. These are wake-up calls. How am I doing? How is it as a man? What do I need as a man? Because I need to show up. I'm going to have to show up every single time. When everybody else is down and chilling and this and that, there is no down and chilling for the guy. It just doesn't exist, dude. You guys, you need to stop that. I'm telling you right now. The success is in it, and I'm not saying go burn yourself out. I'm not saying never sleep. You should sleep. You should be sleeping 8 hours a day, a night. But what I'm saying is understanding and realizing your responsibility, realizing your kuleana, realizing your responsibility. It's not theirs, not his, it's yours. It's yours. It's your responsibility, not anybody else's. The way the marriage is going, right? Your responsibility. Oh, it's my wife has to, she needs to do it. No. You start. I had to change. It wasn't on her. What did I had to do? I had to come to her and be like, hey, I'm failing at this. I am not properly doing this right. And I have failed. I failed in many, many areas. And it took me a long time to let her know that. But while I was, didn't have the balls to let her know, I was fucking up the whole time. Until I came to the truth. That's it. Until I came to the truth, we didn't have a productive relationship. And it was a lot of silence in the relationship. A lot of arguments, a lot of frustration. Very little sex. It's very different now. And we're getting better. And I like it. Right? And you have to know yourself. I feed off of dialogue. I feed off of the interaction. I don't like to fight. I don't like to be frustrated. I don't like to disagree, but it's like, if those things are going to help us get to a point to where we can become better in our relationship, I want that. You dig? Because you're gonna have to do that. You're gonna have to come to the realization. Okay? All right, that's it for today. Trey Shonime, peace. I'm out.